Hello, my name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast. Okay, so Ronnie, thank you for coming today. We're glad to have you on. As the listener knows, this is our very first interview.
Yep.
We announced last week that we're going to have Dr. Ronnie Collins on. Here he is. So Ronnie, welcome to the Ridge Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm honored to be your first one interviewed.
The honor's ours. Thank you.
The
for being
honor's
here.
ours. We've known Ronnie for quite a long while. We ran with his son Sam, and we ran a few races with him too.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've made it clear, the goal of this podcast is to interview local people and to hear their stories. And that's what our goal is today with you, Ronnie, is just to learn a little bit about yourself. And we know you, but we haven't really had a chance to sit down and talk with you. So I figured with long stories, it's just best to start with the beginning.
Yeah.
So Ronnie, can you tell me where you grew up in your child?
I grew up in, really it's Cana, but I grew up over on the side close to 77, so most people consider that Lambsburg.
Lambsburg.
I call it Canaburg, so just to get the both together. Matter of fact, when I grew up, for the first probably 15 years of my life living in Cana, Virginia, we had a Mount Airy address.
Oh.
So I don't know how that worked, but
And it was very laid back. Was it small?
it was small. Yeah, it's a small community. It's grown tremendously in the last few years. Love's Truck Stop's gone in there. That's just changed the whole outlook of everything. Lots more traffic, things of that nature, but still small community.
So did you have any brothers and sisters when you were?
I had one sister. She was 3 years older than me, and one brother who was 13 months older than me. Both of them are dead now.
So did you go to school down the mountain too?
I went to, first 6 years I went to Lansburg Elementary.
Okay.
For the next 3 I went to St. Paul.
Are they still
Yeah, we
open,
did.
Lambsburg Elementary?
No, Lansburg's now a community center.
Community
We go
center,
there
yeah.
and play volleyball, and that's where the family
Interesting.
volleyball happens. But then went to St. Paul for 3 years, and then graduated from Carroll County High School in 1983.
So when you were growing up, were you always a scholar?
No, absolutely not. Just to be honest with you, I feel like I'm a late bloomer at most things. I didn't run when I was younger. I didn't study when I was younger. I didn't read when I was younger. Just to tell you a little bit about, I never thought that I would go to college, period. The first book I ever read cover to cover was the Book of Roots. That thing's about 4 inches thick, if you've seen the Book of Roots. I read that because my grandmother on my father's side had read it. She passed it down to my father, and he read it. And then I took it and read it on the school bus back and forth up the mountain. So that was the first book I ever read, and that was probably, I guess that was in the 10th grade. And it just gave me a love for reading. And probably for the last 30 years, I've averaged reading a book a week for 30 years until I started my doctoral degree, and that changed things.
Well, that's one thing that me and Ethan really enjoy is reading too. And that's one thing we want to really focus on the podcast is talking about books.
Yeah, I think readers truly are leaders. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. My education has come more from the books that I've read than the college degrees that I have.
Yeah.
To be honest, I mean, I've read any subject that I have a great interest in. I'm going to dig and dig and dig and read everything I can get my hands on.
So you really started reading while you were younger.
Yeah, when I was in 10th grade. But now we'll be honest and say probably from the 10th grade and reading the Book of Roots and loving it so much, I didn't read a whole lot then until probably I was about 21 years old. And then that's when my reading habits picked up. And I mean, books. When digital books come along, it was hard for me to accept those because I like having a book in my hand.
Me too.
But I finally did because I found myself with about 7,000 books.
Wow.
And after I'd moved those things a few times, I decided, they look wonderful on the shelf. People would come in and say, "Have you read all those?" And my answer was, "I've read some of them twice." Now, the trick to that is, no, I haven't read them all, but I have read some of them twice.
Yeah.
But I just got tired of lugging them around, so I sold probably 3,500 of those on Amazon.
Oh.
And didn't make much on them, but I moved them, and I've whittled that down now to where I probably have still 1,500 on my bookshelves at home, and the hundreds and hundreds on digital media.
So what type of books do you normally read?
Everything, mostly leadership or Christian living, but I read widely. I love to read fiction. One of my favorite authors for fiction is John Grisham. I love the books that he has wrote. Just a wide variety. I'll read anything.
So have you changed to the Kindle? Have you
Oh,
tried?
Oh yeah, I use the Kindle always now. And
I use it.
occasionally. If somebody gives me a book.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, I was in these groups where they would give you books to read them and then do a review on them. Especially while I was in college, I would do that, and so those print books I would read. But yeah, everything I buy now is on digital.
Well, I've gotten the Kindle Oasis.
Yeah.
And I always said I wouldn't get a digital
Right,
reader.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like to the point where I didn't want to carry around my books all the time because I want to keep them neat
Right.
and nice and looking good. And then I realized, I want to read on the go. And I realized I wasn't taking books on trips or anything so I wouldn't ruin them. So I finally got it, and I really enjoy it. But I still read paper books all the time too.
Well, I think what saved it for me was you can still highlight them, you can still mark them up, you can still take notes. A lot of people don't realize you can do that, but you can. And you can carry 1,000 books with you at one time.
Yeah, in your pocket.
Yeah,
That's
in your
amazing.
pocket. Yeah.
And it's on the cloud too, so if you
You
Yeah.
can do it on your phone,
Yeah.
on your computer,
It's pretty
on your
nice.
Kindle.
And a big thing with me too is my eyesight. Until a few years ago, I could sit in the dark and read, and now I can't. And with that backlit,
Yeah, that's
that
really
helps.
nice.
I don't have to have the glasses all the time to
Yeah.
read. I do wear them anymore to read, but I don't have to if it's backlit well.
So you went through elementary school down the mountain in Lambsburg.
Mhm.
Where did you go to middle school at?
St. Paul.
St.
Paul Middle School.
Yeah, went to St. Paul Middle School. Those were not my favorite years. I did not like school, and especially did not. I liked the people, but when I got to Carroll County High School, all that changed. I loved high school. I didn't like the work.
Yeah.
Again, I never thought I'd go to college. I didn't like the work, but I had lots of good friends, and my teachers were my friends. I mean, some of my best friends were my teachers. So I just, I cried tears when I graduated, not because I wanted to stay in school, but because I knew I was going to miss my friends.
Did you have any one teacher that really affected you personally?
Oh my gosh, there were several, but two. Jane Taylor was my distributive education teacher. She made a huge impact in my life. We became good friends. And then Dorothy Oots. I don't know if y'all ever heard of her or not.
No, sir.
She was my English teacher and loved her. One of the things I loved about her though was that if we got her to talking, we didn't have to work. She liked to tell stories.
We've had teachers like that.
Yeah,
before.
that's true.
So we loved that. But school was different then. There's things that we did then we'd probably get in trouble for now. That was just. I mean, there were times that. I won't even say that since it's a podcast. But
Well, I mean, feel free.
just for instance, in distributive education, part of that was about careers, and I was president of the DECA club, and so we would get notes written for us to go have a business meeting, and we'd go to the local store and have breakfast. One of my teachers would give me their car to drive to breakfast. I mean, if that happened
Wouldn't
now,
happen today, no.
the teacher would be fired. So
Different
it's crazy, but yeah.
So your high school careers, do you think that it has affected you to this day?
For the teachers, you mean, or?
I mean, just your general experience.
Yeah, sure it has. I mean, I believe everything in life affects us and molds us and makes us who we are.
Butterfly
So,
effect.
yeah, my high school experience was a good one. I mean, it was a good one not because I learned anything. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't learn much. I actually then, I don't even think they do it anymore, but then with being in distributed DECA, with being in that, I would leave at 11:22 every morning and go to work. So you got out on work. You only had to take the classes for the credits you needed.
Yeah.
So again, I had no desire to go to college, no plans to go to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college, and it just wasn't. Back in 1983, it wasn't near as
Mainstream.
yeah. I mean, it was really a few that went, and it was the ones who made the better grades, not me. And I passed, but I didn't make tremendously great grade.
So after high school, what did you do?
After high school, well, my 3 years of two of my years of high school, I worked in a restaurant in Mount Airy. It's gone now. It was a place called the Sweden House. It was in the Mayberry Mall. It was a great restaurant. When school was out, I actually went into restaurant management. I was a kitchen manager in a seafood restaurant for a while for one of your principals, Jay Holderfield's dad.
Oh, interesting.
Owned a seafood restaurant.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I was a kitchen manager there and cooked seafood for 2 or 3 years. Actually, it was Jay's dad who was the first person who ever hired me at the Sweden House, and then he went and bought the seafood restaurant.
Wow.
So I did that for a while, and then I was in management with Western Steer Mom and Pops for a few years. And after doing that for a little while, or after doing that for a number of years, really, I just decided it was time to do something different. I mean, in the restaurant business, you got to live with it to make any money. As a manager, I worked 60 hours a week minimum and made good money, but I wasn't smart enough to know that I made the money because they were paying me time and a half for 20 hours. So did that and just decided that I had to get out and do something different. So I left the restaurant and worked in a factory for about a year. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do.
What kind of factory was it?
Sock mill. They made socks.
Was it Haynes?
No, it was, they were making socks. I can't remember who it was for. They also had a shirt division, and they were making, there was a real popular T-shirt back then that all the beaches sold. Now I can't remember what it was, but anyway, that factory was for about a year. And then I went back into the restaurant business and was in management, and had a gentleman who would come in the restaurant 2 or 3 times a week, and he'd always look at me and he'd say, "You always working." He said, "And you work weekends all the time." He said, "If you come work for me, you would never have to work weekends again." He ran a convenience store, owned a convenience store. So it was probably a year later, I quit the restaurant business again, went to a factory and stayed 3 days. And I said, "I can't do this." And I stopped in this man's store, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me you'd quit?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I don't know. I didn't feel like I needed to." And so I went to work for him, and I worked for him for the next 10 years, probably 13 years. I ran the convenience store for him for about 3 years. And by the way, that was probably one of my favorite jobs ever because I love people.
Where was the store?
It was in Cana. It was called 8 Day Jiffy Mart.
Okay.
There was a chain of them then. Actually, the T&M Grocery that's here in Hillsville, that used to be an 8 Day Jiffy Mart.
Okay.
There's been several around. There've probably been 20 or more.
So when did this one close down?
There was a storm that came through and knocked it down.
Oh, it was where the Sunnyco is? The one that got
Yeah,
hit by a tornado?
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what finally shut that one down.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
there for many, many years. But I love doing that. I love people. So, you're always talking to people, interacting with people, and I love the retail side of it. And, I love selling. So, anyway, I did that for about 3 years, and then he bought a couple of motels, and I went and managed a motel for him for 10 years, Howard Johnson Motel over in Withville. Okay. So I did that for about 10 years. Yeah.
So the motel business, do you have any stories there?
Oh, Lord. I have seen everything and anything, and I can honestly tell you that after running one, I despise staying in them.
Yeah.
Motel, yeah.
There is not one, I don't care how clean it is, it's not clean.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. When you've seen what I've seen, I mean, it's just people are nasty.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned your upbringing in Cana.
Yes.
And working down the mountain in Mount Airy and in Cana. And then you mentioned Withville, was it?
Yes, yes.
So have you always lived down the mountain?
I've always been there all my life. All the furthest I've moved is around the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So other side of 77?
Well, no, actually, where I grew up, we were the corner house, and when we moved out of there, Dad built a new house. My brother and my dad and I built a house together, and lived in it. That was in my high school years, and then when I got older, I put my house just around the corner below the one I grew up in. So literally just around the corner. So we've been there a lot. And now I have moved back, and since my dad died, My mother lives with us. She's 81 years old, and we live in the house that I helped Dad build. So that's pretty special.
Comes full circle.
Yeah. Okay. So been there all my life.
You were a religious man, Ronnie, and you served some time as a pastor.
I did.
How did that start?
Well, that started when I was running the motel. Had been there 10 years. Was also a youth pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I was a youth pastor for 7 years in a church in Dobson.
Okay.
I left there and went for 3 years in Cana and served as a youth pastor there. And we had an opportunity to go to a thing in Pontiac, Michigan. It was a big youth rally where thousands, I think there was like 10,000 youth that came. And we went with Joy Ranch Children's Home. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that.
Yeah.
We went with them on that trip, and I got to meet the people who work there. And when we come back, the executive director asked me, would I consider coming to work at Joy Ranch Children's Home? And I said, no, I love what I'm doing. I don't have any desire to leave. Not interested. So, but anyway, after probably 6 weeks, she called me back and said, have you thought any more about it? And I said, yeah, actually I can't get it off my mind, but I said, I have no desire to do it. Honestly, I was making good money.
Yeah.
I'd never been to college, but I was taking home more than most people my age at that point. I was happy with that. I'd been there 10 years. I had a good staff that had been with me for 10 years. I didn't have to work extra hours. Everything was nice, and I didn't want to mess that up.
Job security.
Yeah. And so I said to her, but if I were to consider it, what does it pay? And she told me, and it was about a $30,000 a year pay cut. And I said, not interested. So anyway, a couple weeks went by, and I just could not get it off my mind, and I resigned from my job after 10 years in a motel and went to work at Joy Ranch. I went as their development director, raised money for the home there. After about probably 3 months being there, the executive director left, and the board of directors asked me if I would step up into that role as executive director. So I served in that position for 5 years, and it was through. I'm not now I've lost track of what you asked me how I started something. Got into ministry.
Yeah.
Okay, so after being at Joy Ranch for 5 years. Actually, after being there about 4 years, I decided when I was at the motel, I'd gone to Whitfield Community College and taken some basic computer classes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I took WordPerfect. Y'all ever heard of that?
A little bit. Yeah.
I still think it's better than Microsoft Word. But anyway,
Sure it is.
WordPerfect and Lotus spreadsheets.
Oh, okay. I
Because-
think my mom's used that.
Yeah, we computerized the hotel systems, and so I went and took some basic classes at Whitfield, and honestly loved it. Loved the classes. I'd gotten old enough that I enjoyed school then, but so I had gone and taken some of those classes. After about 4 years at Joy Ranch, I had taken a 2-year General Bible diploma through Liberty University, but it was not accredited. It was a 2-year diploma is all it was. I had taken that, and then I decided that I was going to get my degree in marriage and family. Or no, actually, I decided to do my bachelor's degree. So I did my 4-year degree through Liberty with what credits I had from Whitfield Community College. I had 3 or 6 credits from Surrey Community College, New Testament class, and something else. So I did my bachelor's degree. Never thought I'd go to school, but there I had my bachelor's degree, and then I decided.
It's an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, and I was older. I was 30 some years old when I got my bachelor's.
So did you take these classes on site? Or
No, they were all online. I did everything distance learning. When I started, they were on video cassette.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But,
So not even internet.
No, not even internet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you had to have a proctor. Somebody had to sign off on your test when they were taken, saying you didn't cheat. So
Where's a proctoring location? I know Whitfield has
Whitfield,
one.
yeah.
But
they actually at that time allowed my master's degree social worker to be my proctor.
Oh, okay.
He was a graduate of Liberty.
Okay,
So
I see.
and so anyway, they allowed him to do that. I did my bachelor's degree. And then I decided that I was going to stay at Joy Ranch for the rest of my life. Just like I was going to stay at the motel for the rest of my life. I was going to stay at Joy Ranch for the rest of my life. So I decided I'd go back and do my master's degree in marriage and family therapy because we had so many families. Joy Ranch was started as an orphanage. It was a true orphanage back in the 60s when the McHenrys started that.
Yeah.
I mean, they had 50 and 60 kids there who literally did not have parents, did not have relatives who could look after them. By the time I got to Joy Ranch, most of the kids that were at Joy Ranch were either failed adoptions, where people had adopted kids into their homes and it just didn't work out. Yeah. And the kid had to go back someplace. Kids that had been in a lot of trouble and the parents just couldn't handle them. Kids where parents had been divorced and it was just bad, or parent had died or something of that nature. So the marriage and family therapy thing was really what I felt like needed to happen. So anyway, I did a semester of that and realized that God was calling me into the ministry, and it wasn't marriage and family therapy. So I went to my board and I said, I've decided that I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going. I have no idea. But I'm changing my degree. I went to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I actually went on campus there. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So I got my master's degree there, but I told the board, I said, I'm leaving. I'll give you 6 months notice. I don't know where I'm going. Don't know what I'm going to do. And at that point, they actually offered to pay for my master's degree if I would just stay. And I said, as much as I appreciate that, I couldn't live with myself knowing that I'm going to leave when I get it done. Yeah. So after 6 months, I went on staff at First United Methodist Church in Hillsville as their associate pastor, and got my master's degree there, and I was happy. Like I said, nobody in my family had ever gotten a college degree. A master's degree was that was it.
Graduate degree.
That was, that was it.
Yeah.
So that was in. I can't remember exactly what year. That would have been 2008, I think, when I graduated with my master's degree. And so 18 years I served as a pastor. I actually was at First United Methodist Church, Hillsville, about 7 years, and we started a downtown youth ministry. It was called Out of the Box.
Out of the Box on Main Street,
Yeah, and we started with 11 youth. I'll never forget it. We started with 11 teenagers from the area that would come on Wednesday night, and we'd do Bible study and hang out. And they started inviting their friends. We'd have pizza on Wednesday nights, and we'd have games. We had a pool table, just trying to make it fun and a good place, good safe place for teenagers to hang out.
Yeah.
So then we started having Friday night fifth quarters after football games, home football games. We'd have Friday night fifth quarters. The building that we were in could hold probably 60 people.
Okay.
And we'd have 120 kids show up. And I mean, it was fun, but it was a little scary at times. We had so many kids. Yeah. But we started having so many young people come to that they started asking us, why don't you start a church where we could come on Sundays to worship, a place where we'd feel comfortable? Because mostly what we were getting were youth that a lot of them were in bad situations. Didn't go to church. Parents didn't go to church. I'll never forget. We started taking some of them down to church on Sunday night. If you've ever been in church much, you understand that, there's an etiquette. There's, it's not so much anymore that you got to dress up, but you got to have manners. Yeah, and I'll never forget the first night we took about 25 of them down to a night service that one of the kids was up front and said to the one in the back, come up here. And he did. He got on the pew and he walked over every pew. So anyway, our bishop in the United Methodist Church at that time, Bishop James Swanson, came, and we had a dedication of that youth center because it had just gone crazy. I mean, it was the talk of the conference. Everybody was excited about it, and we had that dedication of the building and the ministry, and I'll never forget, Bishop Swanson looked at me. He says, you're going to have to start a church down here, right? And I said, you just tell me when. And so we did. We started Out of the Box Worship Center. Out of that youth ministry, we started with 37 people, and we grew to 300 really quick. And we did that. We maintained that for probably about 7 years, and we got this crazy idea about buying the buildings and making it bigger. And when we did that, it just all fell apart. So
Yeah.
we were down when COVID hit. We probably had about 120 people coming every week, and when COVID came back, we came back with about 30 people. So when I decided, and I knew it was time for me to move on and do something different after 18 years. I was just restless. And so again, I resigned and gave 3 months notice that time that I wasn't going to take an appointment, and so that's how I got into ministry. And I'll always be in ministry.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a certified chaplain through the International Fellowship of Chaplains. I'm
And
ordained
you've worked at the
through them.
sheriff's department for a while.
I am one of the chaplains for the sheriff's department, senior chaplain of the sheriff's department. But since leaving the church and starting a new career, being involved there has been almost nothing. It's just been impossible with changing jobs and learning a new career. So, but I'll always be in ministry. I mean, there'll always be ministry work.
So to look back, when you initially started, it was part of First United Methodist.
It was, yes.
And
It was a sister or a daughter church
Okay.
of First United Methodist Church.
But then later on, you split off and it became its own thing.
We did, yeah. It was considered one church in 2 locations.
Okay.
And then it just became so different, that it was hard to. It was just hard for the two to help each other out, and that wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Both of them grew. Both of them did well. So it was a good thing.
You also mentioned the bishop. Is that kind of like an area
Yeah,
organizer?
in the United Methodist Church, it's organized in levels of leadership. I had a district superintendent who was over our district, which included Wytheville, Galax, Hillsville, Dublin area, and then the district superintendents over them was a bishop, and the bishop was over our conference, which
That's what you mentioned earlier.
part of Tennessee, and yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned your new career. You're on the board of supervisors.
I got elected as a member of the board of supervisors. Actually, it's the third time that I ran.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that.
Third time's a charm. Yeah, the first time I ran, it was probably, I can't remember the year. The first time I ran, I believe, was back around 2004, maybe. And I ran in the Republican primary, and the person who was already in office beat me by 7 votes.
Oh.
So, but you know what I've realized after that? I ran 4 years prior to this, and did not win. If I had been elected at that point in my life, it would have eaten me alive.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't prepared for it.
So have you always seen yourself in government?
I have always loved it. I've always loved the process. I don't like politics, but I love the process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now you're also working as a real estate agent.
Working as a real estate agent, yeah.
What's that like?
Is that busy?
It is busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna tell you guys, and I know this is not a religious podcast, but I attribute every good thing in my life to God's blessing. When I left the church, again, I left not knowing where I was going, what I was going to do. Our ideologies in the United Methodist Church and my own had become so different that I couldn't stay. So I gave a notice, and we left and the family went on vacation to Tybee Island, and we got tickets to see, just crazy, the Savannah Bananas.
Oh, yeah.
If you've heard of them, I don't know how many years they've been playing now, but they've literally had sold out crowds every single ball game they've ever played. You can't hardly get tickets. So I had gone online when we'd gone to Tybee, couldn't get tickets. Well, I went online this time, found tickets. So we went, but when I got tickets, I decided to read the guy's book. He's wrote a book called Fans First. You guys should read that.
Okay.
It's called Fans First, and
Who was it written by?
Jesse Cole.
Okay.
I've seen a picture of you.
Yeah. Jesse's
you
the
and Sam
founder
with him,
of the Bananas, and so anyway, I tweeted Jesse after I read the book. The book reads like Jesse Cole's concept of the Savannah Bananas is sort of like Chick-fil-A. The customer's always right, and we're there to please. And So anyway, in this book, he writes all this crazy stuff. Like, for instance, if you're at a ball game at the Savannah Bananas, and it only holds 4,000 people, the stadium holds 4,000 people. It's full every time. If it rains during the ball game, the staff will walk every single person in that park to their cars with an umbrella. And I'm going, that's not real. I mean, and for $24 or whatever the tickets were, you got all you can eat hamburgers, chicken sandwiches, the game ticket,
Wow.
Sodas. I mean, all the food.
I mean, that sounds like something
that.
from a different time.
There's no way. There's got to be a trick to this. There's something that's going wrong with this. So anyway, I tweeted Jesse Cole on the way down there after reading his book, and I said, I've read your book, and I said, first of all, I don't believe it, but I said, if it's real, I'm going to be your biggest fan. And so we went to the game, and it really was real. I mean, everything that's in the book, we laughed, we cried, we danced, we sang. We had a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an absolute, that is one of the most fun times we've ever had as a family. I mean, there's something for everybody.
I think your son Sam really enjoyed himself. He's wore that
Oh yeah,
suit around
that
school.
banana suit sort of got him in trouble a few times. Yeah, I think y'all are going to be interviewing somebody that doesn't like that.
Yeah, that didn't like it very much.
Yeah, we all got banana suits that night. So, but Samuel has got more use out of his banana suit.
Absolutely. But from reading some newspaper articles, I've read one where it said that you want to run the county like a Chick-fil-A.
I think it
Actually
ought to
have it
run
down,
like
right?
I think it
Chick-fil-A.
ought to run like Chick-fil-A. I really do. I mean, I really believe when you call about your taxes that they ought to be honored to serve you because you're a taxpayer. I believe when you have an issue, you ought to be treated with respect. I think that we, as the local government, are there to serve the people. The people are not there to serve us. I ran for office because I want to represent my people in my district, especially in the Fancy Gap district, to the best of my ability. I want to advocate for them. So anyway, through the Savannah Bananas, after I left there, I had put a post on Facebook about God just spoke to me during that game and said, I said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, but God spoke to my spirit and said, what you're going to do for the rest of your life, you're going to get lots of joy from, and you're going to be able to share your faith, and you're going to have more fun than you've ever had before. I posted that, and a lady who owns a real estate company in Winston-Salem, who I've known for probably 15 years, they own a home in Fancy Gap, a cabin, and when they would come up, they would come to church, and they considered me their pastor. When they were up here, which they were in Winston most times. But she said, I read your post, and she said, I'm really excited. Give me a call when you get home. I want to talk to you. So she owns a real estate company, and she wanted me to come be a real estate agent.
If you mind, what's the name of the company? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Ashley Lay Real Estate.
Ashley Lay.
We're a Keller Williams company, but Ashley Lay Real Estate team.
Okay.
Matter of fact, we were talking today. There are something over 10,000 Keller Williams real estate teams in the United States.
Wow.
Now, a team consists of two or more.
Yeah.
They could be two. Our team's about 27 people right now, I believe.
Whoa.
But they consist of anywhere from 2 to 100 people on the team, maybe above that. Last year, Ashley Lay Real Estate was like 240 out of those 10,000 teams. This year, we're up around 150.
Oh, wow.
Out of those. So it's a good company. Ashley and her husband Kevin are they love God, they give credit to God, they promote family first, God first, family second, and your business third. And the thing that they're trying to do is share with others how they've been blessed.
Yeah. So you've had this opportunity. Did you take any classes once you realized that you want to go into real estate?
Well, I had to take classes. They say the real estate. By the way, if you'll Google this, you'll find this. They say that the national real estate exam is the most difficult exam of anything to take. That more people fail it than any other exam that's taken. So I had to take. I can't remember. I think it was 120 hours. Or something like that.
Whoa.
It was a lot. It was a bunch of hours that I had to take. And then once I got that taken, I had to pass the class exam. And then I had to go and test for the national and state exam. Yeah. And you have to pass an exam in every state that you get licensed to sell in. So I was scared to death, to be honest with
Yeah.
you, because I don't test well. I have never tested well. So I'm be honest with you. I don't mind the class. I love doing the classes. I love to learn, but I don't like to take tests. So anyway, and I got scared because I talked to people who failed that thing 6 times. I mean, you know, and I see people all the time. I'm in groups on Facebook where people are studying for it.
Yeah.
They've just quit. They're not trying anymore because they just can't pass it. And so I was scared to death, to be quite honest, after hearing that somebody failed it 6 times. Well, I passed it, passed the class, passed the state, passed the national. So I now have my Virginia license and my North Carolina license.
But do you get any pet habits when you get that nervous? Like I stop eating sometimes when I get
never
nervous
stop
before a race.
I start eating more.
Like before a race, when I get nervous, I can't eat.
Yeah,
That's one of my things.
my problem is I start eating more. Yeah. Eating is if anything, if there's anything that I do when I'm stressed, it's eat.
Eating.
Yeah, it's just
Easy to do.
I
It's
pace
easy to
too.
do,
I
yeah.
find myself pacing a
Yeah,
lot when I get
yeah.
nervous.
and I'm very driven and motivated, and you know I like to accomplish things.
Yeah.
I like to, you know, and so I was going to say, the average real estate agent in the United States sells 6 houses a year.
And you did that in the past 2 months, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I got my license. I got my license in October. I put my first house under contract before 30 days. I think I'm on my 14th one now.
That's crazy.
And in real estate, and I didn't realize this when I went into it, but in real estate, you have 2 sides of real estate. You have the agent who lists the house for sale, and then you have the agent who brings the buyer.
Yeah.
So you have list agents and buyers. I'm doing both.
Okay. So
Because I am the expansion for Ashley Real Estate into the Blue Ridge area.
is that typically from the same agency?
Well, it can be, but when we list a house, like I had one go live today, a listing in Westfield, North Carolina. I've got 2 going live tomorrow. Both are in Cana. I've got 5, maybe 6 for next week that will go live. When we post those live in what they call the multi-listing service, any agent with a real estate license in the state can then show those homes and sell them.
So the hours of an agent must be kind of crazy
Oh
too.
my goodness!
Getting
yes.
schedules worked out and getting people to come over.
Well, and that's where I'm at right now. Is that I have got to. I went 6 months without a salary.
Yeah.
From the time I left the church to getting into real estate, and God blessed us where we had enough money put aside that we could do that. But going without a salary for 6 months, I don't say no to many deals, you know. But what I've got to do, and I told my wife multiple times, once we get caught up, I have got to set parameters around. After 7 o'clock, I don't answer my phone.
Yeah.
I'm not going to set up at 10:30 at night working on contracts. And it's really, to be honest with you, it's very intimidating because you're dealing with contracts and legal stuff, and it's really not that bad. It's just the unknown.
Yeah.
Once you learn
Something new.
Oh my goodness! The first contract I ever did took me, 4 hours. I was sweating over that thing, going over and over, and now I can do a contract in 20 minutes. It's just it's getting a comfort level with what you're doing.
But I think we live in a hustle and bustle
Oh yeah,
day,
it's
culture
nonstop.
today.
Yeah.
So some people are, and even ourselves are conflicted to work, but you also want to have fun time with family and friends and stuff.
Absolutely.
So there's like 2 conflicting ideas here, and finding a
Balance.
balance between the 2 can be difficult.
It has to be a balance, and in my life, and Samuel could tell you, my kids can tell you that God's always first in our lives. If the church hadn't burned down, we're going to be there for church, for worship. That doesn't have to be on Sunday. That can be on Wednesday. That can be on Saturday. It doesn't have to be at a certain time or day. But God comes first. I'm a tither. I believe that God gets the first 10% of every dime I make. If I find $1 in the Walmart parking lot, God gets the first dime of it. I'm just a firm believer in that, and He has blessed me. There have been times when money has come out of nowhere to pay bills with, and I'm a firm believer it's God's blessing. But God first, family second. We've always orchestrated our lives to where our kids are involved. When I was a pastor, if I went, we bought a camper. If I was asked to go to Georgia and preach in a revival, they went with me. You know, we pulled them out of school and homeschooled them for 3 years just so they could travel with us. Because there was a time when I was really, really involved with the Methodist Conference, and I was in Knoxville, Tennessee a lot, up in Alcoa, and we were in Georgia quite a bit with a church that I preached some there with. We were just all over the place. So there have been very few moments in my kids' lives that I have missed because we've always orchestrated our lives to where they'd be there. My wife and I, when we got married, I got married late too. I was 41 when I was married and divorced when I was young. It didn't last but about a year. I was 23 and it lasted about a year. And to be quite honest with you, I was angry at the world.
Yeah.
I was angry. I said, I'd always said I'd never have a divorce. That wouldn't happen in my life, and it did. So I was angry. I said I'd never do it again because I'd never give anybody the opportunity to make that happen again. So I stayed single for 20 years. Problem was, I always wanted 10 children.
Yeah.
And it's sort of hard to do that without a wife. I mean, it's possible, but
it's possible.
Sort of frowned on.
Yeah.
But I wanted 10 children. So we'll jump tracks just a little bit. So I had decided that, at that point in life, there was a time when you couldn't adopt kids as a single parent. It just wasn't. It wasn't going to happen. Well, I found out, and I can't remember how many 100,000 kids there are in the United States that need homes. And so I got approved as a foster parent and never fostered one, but I got approved as a foster parent so that I could then adopt.
Okay.
So I decided I was going to adopt as a single parent. Well, it didn't happen, but while I was working at Joy Ranch, we had a young man that came there to live. He was 14 years old. And I had prayed and asked God to send me a son. I wanted to adopt a boy, but I wanted one between 3 and 5 years old. I really wanted one that was out of diapers, that could care for himself somewhat, where I didn't have to do all that. But anything but a teenager, I would not. I worked with teenagers at Joy Ranch. That's all we had was teenagers. And I said, I won't take a teenager. So anyway, this young man came when he was 14. We'd do a timeline on our kids when they would come to Joy Ranch, where they lived, how many times they'd moved homes. So this young man his dad had killed himself when he was 3. From the time he was 3 to 14, in 11 years, he had moved homes 14 times in 11 years. Wow. He had threatened suicide. He had been in the hospital for suicidal attempts, whatever they might be. He lived in a couple children's homes, and it came time for him to go home. They worked through a level system, and came time for him to go home. And so we sat down around the table. We'd always sit around the table with the parent, whoever guardian was, and the social worker would say, this child has been through the multi-level system, been here a year. It's time for him to go home. Yeah. And at that point, the parents said this young man wasn't welcome home. And so I adopted him. So that's my oldest son. Most people don't know that I have an adopted son. Most people talk about how much we look alike. That there's no way you can deny that one.
Is that Victoria's father?
That's Victoria's father. Yeah, Michael is my adopted son. But there's exactly 20 years difference in us. He's 37, I'm 57. So, but and the boys will tell you, our 2 birth children will tell you, just like I'll tell you, and just like Mike will tell you, there's no difference.
Yeah.
It's funny. My pet peeve is when people find out I have an adopted son, they'll say, well, do you have any real children? And I'm going, real children? What makes a real child?
That's right.
There's no difference. Yeah. He's as much my son as these boys are, and they love him as a big brother, and he's as much part of the family as anybody.
And he actually went to law enforcement.
He was in about 12 or 13 years. He was a corrections officer at the New River Valley Regional Jail. And that was tough.
That must be a tough job.
And I really thought he would probably spend his time there and retire, but I can't blame him. I wouldn't.
That has to be a tough job.
Yeah, so he's driving truck now, but doing good for himself.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Yeah. So I don't know where we came from that question, but
I can't tell you. It's
But,
good.
I guess he gets to see a lot of the country too.
oh yeah. Well, he doesn't drive long distance. He's usually home every night. So,
That's good.
or he leaves at night and he's home every day. So yeah, he doesn't want to be away from the kids either. So he's
That's understandable.
his daddy taught him that he needs to be at home. I know what I was going to say. My wife and I made a commitment when we got married that we would eat dinner together every night as much as possible.
Yeah.
And there have honestly, until the boys got into sports so big, for 12 years, we never missed dinner together more than a night or two.
That's
You know,
something to
and
aspire to.
a lot of times we have to eat out to make it work. But I believe that there's a bonding time around the dinner
On the
table.
table.
So we made that commitment. But it's God first, family second, and career third.
So have you traveled much in your life?
Traveled quite a bit. I've been to Egypt and Israel. Did a Bible study tour there for 16 days, and
Wow.
just thoroughly. Anybody ought to go. There's so much that we miss. I don't know if you guys read the Bible or not, but there's so much that we miss when we read the Bible. That just going there, learning what the culture is, learning what the lay of the land is, learning about things. That's what's so amazing about that. So I don't know, do you guys read the Bible at all?
I have a little bit. So you mentioned Egypt. Is that?
Yeah.
And did you go from Egypt to Israel? Or did you model the Exodus? Or?
We flew into Cairo, Egypt.
Okay.
And we spent a few days in Egypt, and then we rode a bus into Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were there. Went out on the Jordan River. We went out on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, it's sort of like, you've probably heard the story in the Bible about the fishes and the loaves, where it was like 5 fish or something like that. Well, the amazing thing that the fish that are so prominent in the Sea of Galilee are sardines.
Oh,
So they're just
small
little
fish.
fish,
Wow.
small fish. So
Yeah.
it's things like that you just don't get that when you read the stories, So lots of stories like that came from the Bible that intrigue me. Don't mean a whole lot to some people. The story of David and Goliath. Are you familiar with that story? So let me ask you guys a question. I know it's your podcast,
Okay.
but when you read the Bible, it says that David took a slingshot and he slung a rock and he hit Goliath in the forehead.
Forehead. Yeah.
Which way did he fall?
Forwards.
If you would think you'd fall.
It says he fell forward.
Yeah.
But if you hit somebody hard enough with a rock in the forehead,
You think they'd go backwards.
Yeah,
you think they go backwards.
Yeah.
In the Hebrew language, they didn't have vowels. They didn't use vowels. So
liquid.
when the Hebrew was translated, we had to put in the vowels. And the same word that's used for forehead could have been kneecap, the shin.
Oh, interesting.
It makes sense if he was hitting the shin
He'd
with a
fell
rock,
forward.
he would have fell forward.
Interesting.
And that's not what killed him. What killed him?
The fall itself.
No, David cut his head off
Oh.
with a sword.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's things like that,
Yeah.
Interesting.
But you come back here and you tell people that David actually probably hit him in the shin with that, not in the forehead. They go, oh, no, that's not what my Bible says. It's sort of like the story of Peter denying Jesus. You remember that story? He denied Jesus 3 times. Bible says, Jesus says to Peter, before the cock crows, you'll deny me 3 times. So we go into churches all the time and they have these roosters on the altar at Easter time because it symbolizes Peter denying Jesus.
Yeah.
Did you know that wasn't talking about a chicken? The cock's crow was the shofar blowing at the changing of the guard.
Oh.
That's what they called the cock's crow. They would blow that shofar at the changing of the guard. So Jesus was saying, before the changing of the guard, you're going to deny me 3 times. You come back here and tell people that, and they go, yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a rooster.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not.
I think you've told us about the eye of the needle before. Is that the actual?
Yeah, a little bit about that. I'm really still confused about what Jesus meant about that. There was actually what they called an eye of a needle, where at night they would shut the gates and they would have this place where you really had to squeeze through to get into the town. But I really believe that Jesus meant that it was easier for it was harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it was for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. I think that's what he really meant.
Yeah.
So
It's not interesting.
I've seen some videos about that, but I haven't really
yeah,
understood them. Like you said, it's an interesting topic.
yeah, it's a lot of that. It's intriguing. But yeah, I've traveled there. I've traveled a lot of places in the United States. I've run marathons in Arizona, in South Carolina, in Georgia, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Oklahoma,
Oh, okay.
Washington, D.C. There have been several states. I've gone to Nicaragua a couple of times on mission trips and
I
made
know
some really good friends there.
For your work, you've traveled a little bit too.
Quite a bit. When I was in the motel business, I traveled quite a bit
Yeah.
to trainings and leadership stuff, and again, even with Joy Ranch, I traveled quite a bit.
So to not to derail from this
Oh, no.
conversation, but you mentioned like Hebrew and
Yeah.
difference in the vowels. And you can read Greek, right?
Well, I can read Koine Greek.
Koine, yeah.
Koine Greek.
Okay.
Biblical Greek.
Yeah.
Can you read biblical Hebrew?
No.
Okay.
That thing, it's all Greek to me. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Hebrew was just so hard. I mean, I had the absolute greatest professor ever for Greek. His name was Burns Coleman. He was a professor at Gardner Webb,
Okay.
and he came over to Gordon and taught Greek.
So that was at the seminary?
It was so hard. Yeah, it was difficult. And he told us, he said, a lot of you are going to be lost. He said, you're going to be lost for a week. You're going to be lost for a month. He said, some of you are going to be lost until almost the end of the semester. And one day, he said, the light bulb's going to come on. In Greek, the article the, T-H-E,
6 different
that
forms,
has
right?
everything to do with how it's translated. The light bulb come on when I finally realized that. So yeah, I had a goal when I did Greek class. I had to take a year of Greek and a year of Hebrew. My goal was to read through the New Testament in Greek every year, and that way learn to translate it better. And, that never happened. But I can still read it. It has some semblance to our language. I mean, crazy enough.
Yeah.
Hebrew has absolutely no.
There are so many English words with like Greek
Yes.
suffixes.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, the Greek vocabulary is so much larger. The word love. I mean, we love cheeseburgers. We love our wife. We love running. We love everything. Well, they have one word for loving their spouse, while they have another word for loving cheeseburgers. So it's different. But Hebrew, I passed Hebrew. But I didn't enjoy it a lot. That's where Samuel got his name. When we were in Hebrew class, the professor made us choose a Hebrew name.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose Samuel, which is Shmuel.
Yeah.
Shmuel in Hebrew is Samuel.
Shmuel.
Yeah. So my name was Shmuel, and my wife and I, we were so old when we got married. I was 42. She's 9 years younger than me. But our prayer was that we would have children fast, because we were going to get old enough we couldn't have children. And I was going to name my first one Samuel. And so that's how Samuel got his name.
Interesting. Biblical language are really interesting to me. I would like to learn Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah.
I've taught myself Spanish, and I've actually read some of the Bible in Spanish and other texts that weren't really just like.
Well, Ethan, he's really good at Spanish. I took 3 years of it. I can't speak a lick. I don't know if I just didn't. I scored good in the class, but I didn't really have the drive to actually go and learn. I think if I tried to learn it with like a tutor or something or read it, I could. But
I need to learn it with a tutor.
Yeah.
But I scored good in class. Mm-hmm. By the way, we was talking about, I never made A's and B's. I never made the honor roll. I graduated my doctorate with a 4.0. I made the honor roll, graduated with honors. That's just, I'm more surprised than anybody else. But.
So I think we've gotten up to the point where you finished your master's. Mm-hmm. Have we talked about his doctorate?
Well, my wife and I had an agreement that if we were out of debt by the time I was 50 years old, that I would go back and do my doctorate. Because when I got my master's, I thought, man, I would love. But there's no reason to. I would love to go on and get my doctorate. So we made an agreement that when I was 42, that by the time I was 50, if we were out of debt, that she would go to work and that I would go to school full time and get my doctorate. Well, we hit 50, we were out of debt, but I wasn't ready to make the move
Yeah.
and get back into school. So I went back when I was 50. I was 54
Okay.
Yeah.
when I started my doctorate. It took me 2 years to get it, and I'm glad I did it. I don't want to do it again. I mean, it was
Rigorous, I bet.
Because I remember you talking, or Samuel talking about you working in the mornings and stuff.
Oh my! I mean, you know, when I was in undergrad, we would write 6, 8, 10-page papers.
Yeah.
I was writing 70 and 80 pages, and I mean,
wow.
it's just. But I think people have asked me, what did my doctorate degree teach me? It taught me to be a better writer.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one of my first lessons, I'll never forget it. Professor asked us to write something, and it had to be 10,000 words. And he took it and he graded it, and he says, "It looks good. Now say what you just said in 5,000 words." And you know, when you got to take something like that that's 10,000 and put it into 5,000, you really got to learn, you know, how to. What he's trying to teach you is to say what you need to say and not all this fluff and just not wordy. And so anyway, he took the 5,000 words and said, "It looks good. Now whittle it down to 2,000." And you know, so that was some of our first things. I enjoyed my doctoral degree, but it was a lot of late nights and a lot of writing and a lot of, man. I mean, for 2 years I didn't rest much because I always knew it was hanging over me. You know, so but I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did it.
And you were taking those classes during COVID too, weren't you?
I started that during COVID. Yeah, it was really the perfect time because as a pastor, the United Methodist churches were shut down. We were doing everything online, just like sort of like what you all are doing
with school.
We did over a year of podcasting and you know, live sermons through video.
Okay.
So it was just perfect because we weren't allowed to go into the hospitals and visit. We weren't allowed to go door to door and visit. So it was perfect timing. So I had my first year of my doctoral degree, most of the time I was able to be at home. And so it was perfect timing. That second year, it's like everything else. It just, by the time that second year rolled around, it was hard. I mean, to just keep doing it. But,
and did the difficulty level ramp up as you got through the degree?
Yes. Yeah, it ramped up. I guess the most scary thing for me was that at the end of mine, I had to sit with a professor and defend my work, but that went well. Didn't have any problems.
So how long does that process take, sitting and defending your work?
I think we had 2 hours together, so it wasn't treacherous. It wasn't, you know, it was a D-Min. It wasn't a THD, you know, so it was not as in depth as what you could PhD, something at that level. You'd have to do a whole lot more than what I did. But.
So do you write your doctoral thesis as your final project?
Yes.
Is that what you do? How long was that piece of work?
That piece of work was almost 200 pages long. Yeah.
What was it about, if you don't mind me asking?
It was about chaplaincy.
Okay.
The you know, from the inception of where we find chaplaincy, and in this study we found it all the way back really into the Bible. It wasn't called a chaplain then, but you know what a chaplain does. A chaplain's there to serve, first of all. It's not to evangelize even. It's to serve.
Be there.
And, to be there for people. And so it was really a history of where it started and where it's come to now, and you know what our philosophy was of what a chaplaincy ought to look like, and you know what we should be involved in, and what kind of training should be, you know, required, and things of that nature.
So how long before you defended your work did you start working on the
2 years.
2 years. So the whole time you start writing it.
The whole time, yeah.
The whole time.
We were told when we started the degree, when you get done, you're going to have quite a big project. You need to start now. You're going to critique it as you go, but you need to write it as you go.
Yeah.
So we really started from day one.
Are there any points in the process that you had doubts about where you were writing, or
Oh my goodness.
thought that maybe you should change what you're writing about?
Oh my goodness. There was really never a doubt that I needed to change tracks, you know. But there were times when I'm thinking, why am I doing this? You know, this is hard. I mean, you got a family and you got work and and at that time I was pastoring a church. I was also a chaplain for hospice.
Yeah.
I served as a hospice chaplain for a year. that was a good experience. Taught me a whole lot. But always, and at that time I was actually pastoring 3 churches. I had my church and was helping pastor 2 others.
Wow.
And driving a school bus and
You told us about
this.
Yeah.
How did you start driving a
I
school
never
bus?
intended to drive a school bus. When Samuel started running cross country, I went to a meeting one night, and one of the coaches wasn't your all's coach, but he said, if you all don't recruit some bus drivers, kids are not going to make these events because we don't have enough bus drivers. So I went and got my CDLs to drive a bus and intended to drive for the team when needed. The day I got my license, a gentleman who had driven for like 30 years at St. Paul had a stroke. And they called me the next day and said, would you drive his route the rest of the week while I drove it all year?
Yeah.
Loved it. I love driving it. I love the kids. I love, I think kids ought to be kids. I want them to be respectful, and I want them to be safe, but I tell them all the time, you can have fun, you can laugh, you can be loud, but you can't scream. If you scream, I don't know if you're dying or having fun. So don't do that. So I love it. I've been doing it for 2 years now. It's getting a little hard. It's getting a little hard because in the mornings it's not hard because nobody's looking at real estate at 6:30 in the morning. In the afternoons it's getting difficult because a lot of people do want to see real estate in the afternoon. So, I make more in one deal in real estate than I make in a month driving the bus.
Yeah.
So it gets difficult, but I don't drive the bus to make money. I never have.
Yeah.
I drive it to serve my community.
Yeah, of course. And
I would do it for a living.
Yeah.
If you can make a living at it, you can.
we've talked about travel a little bit, but there's also something special about home too.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So,
My favorite place in the world.
what about this place is special to you?
About
If you can pick one thing about our town,
our community.
our community.
I think really it's just after traveling. I spent 2 weeks ago, I spent the week in California. A few months ago, we spent the week in Florida. We travel a lot of different places. There is no place like Carroll County, Virginia. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, we love going to the beach, but we love coming home. I mean, it's just people, and I guess it's a familiarity thing. I'm not. There is one other place, and the kids will tell you 2 other places. If I don't ever want to live in a city, but if I were going to live in a city, I could live in Atlanta, Georgia. We spent a lot of time in Atlanta. We have good friends that live in Atlanta, in downtown, and we've spent a lot of time there and love it. I mean, Samuel's been raised going to Atlanta, so he knows his way around Atlanta pretty good too. And I could live there just because there's lots of places to run. I love that, but. And people think of Atlanta being this scary place where people get hurt. I mean, we stay with an attorney. Our friend's an attorney, and we stay in his house. They don't even lock the doors. I mean, I lock my doors in Carroll County.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a funny story with that though, just to lighten it a little bit. I got a call from them one day, the couple in Atlanta, and they said, we got to tell you what just happened. And we had been somewhere in Georgia. They had gone for a walk, didn't lock their doors, came back, and there was a bald man laying on their couch. They just thought it was me.
Oh.
So they let me sleep. They just thought that I had stopped by. Didn't think about the fact that my vehicle wasn't in the driveway, but they just thought I'd stopped by. And, they went on about their business a little bit. The drunk guy got up. He had wandered in off the street and just laid down on the couch. So anyway. Yeah, but there in Lake Hartwell, Georgia, is one of my favorite places in the world. If you ever get a chance to go and camp, that's where you ought to go and camp.
We went down to Buckhead a few years ago to see the Wiggles.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
in concert in
Yeah.
Atlanta. And I love the city. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And we had a great time. But one thing I wouldn't do is go in there in August.
Yeah.
It was 104 degrees when we got down there, and I thought it was going to...
It gets hot.
It's hot.
We've gone to several Braves games. We went to a basketball game, and we like it. I've run the marathon in Atlanta. That was fun.
But yeah, a few weeks ago, I went to Montana and Idaho, and we went through Chicago and New York and New York City.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed the trip. I
Yeah.
really did, but I don't think there's no place like home.
Oh, no place.
It's just a certain feel about it coming
Yeah.
back here. Is just
Something about
comforting.
growing up here too makes it more special.
And
Yeah.
we run through town all the time, and
Oh, yeah.
I've never been
Yeah.
scared to run through
Right.
Hillsville. I
Right.
always feel safe.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, and they're good people too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about being small town where you know most people.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not, if there's a stranger in town, you know they're a stranger in town. You know you've not ever seen that face before, so
Yeah.
beware.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to one of our
Topics we want to
topics
talk
we
about.
really want to
Running.
discuss with you. Running.
Running.
Yeah, we met Samuel a few years ago when he first started running cross country.
I met him about a month prior. He ran a 5K with
Yep.
me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
I remember that.
For viewers who aren't here right now, Samuel's in the room with us.
He's
Samuel
right here,
is-
Samuel.
Hello.
See, he said he wanted to be on the podcast. I
So
said I
he
don't
made
know,
it.
but
He made it.
he made it on the podcast.
If you just want to say hi real quick.
Hello, I'm Ronnie's middle child.
And he's a great runner too. But
Yeah.
we met Samuel starting cross country, and at first I didn't know who he was, but it's like we became good friends.
So yeah. Instant
And,
chemistry.
Instant chemistry. That's right. Well, a few months passed and the season ended, and I think you invited me to run the Mayberry
Yeah.
half marathon,
Mhm.
and I wasn't sure I could do a half marathon. I was kind of nervous about it, but I agreed, and I really enjoyed myself. And after it was over, I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do anything longer than this. And I know you had run a few marathons, but y'all invited me down to Myrtle, and I decided to do it, and we trained, and it was one of the best experiences
Yeah. It's
I've ever
life-changing,
had.
huh?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But so you said you didn't run in high school, did you?
I never even dreamed of running in high school. I mean, I didn't run anywhere. I mean, I might run to eat, but other than that, I didn't run. I started running when I was 20. I was 21 years old. A buddy of mine joined the Army,
Oh, okay.
and they told him that he had to get prepared to run 5 miles every morning when he got up, so that he needed to start running. I think he had 6 months before he went in, and so he asked me, will you run with me? He hated to run.
Yeah.
So we went out, we started running. I'd never run in my life. I was running in Kmart shoes. I don't know if y'all even remember Kmart, but it was before Walmart.
Yeah.
It was before Walmart, but I was running in Kmart shoes. But so anyway, I ran with him for the 6 months before he went into the military. We would run a mile, 2 miles,
Yeah.
nothing major. But I really liked it. And so when he went in the military, I made a commitment. I told him, I said, I'm going to get up every morning and run 5 miles because you're going to be. He was in Kentucky in boot camp, and of course I was back here. And so I would get up every morning and run 5 miles, and he would run 5 miles there. And back then you didn't have
Strava.
Yeah.
the Strava and all
Yeah.
this stuff. So I'd get a letter every 10 days that, how's your running going, things like that. And that's how we would hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
So he was in the reserves. So he was in, he served a couple of years and then came out and was in the reserves. But when he came out of the military, he never ran again.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. And I never quit. So
Yeah.
I was about 21 years old. I just fell in love with it. And, but I never considered, I did it because, number one, it helped me to stay slim
Yeah.
back in those days. It made me feel better. It made me feel better about myself. I mean, it just made me realize that I could do things that I never thought I could do. I'll never, it was so fun. There were no GPS watches then. Sounds like it was 100 years ago. It really wasn't. But
Yeah.
I would take my car and measure off distances. So I can
okay.
tell you from my house where a mile is in every way,
Yeah.
where 2 miles is, 3 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles, whatever. I would find something that was challenging.
Yeah.
We've got one area that goes steep downhill, steep uphill. I'll never forget the day Samuel beat me up that one. That was, but I would do that. I'd get in there and I would just do it over and over and over to try and build my stamina and run. But I probably ran from the time I was 21 until I was probably 31. Never dreamed of entering a 5K or anything. It wasn't on my radar screen. My doctor, is Dr. David McPherson, who's in Hillsville. David is a Christian man, and one of his nurses said to me, she said, "You love to run." She said, there's a 5K in Galax on Saturday. Why don't you run? I said, I'm not running in a race, you know. So anyway, I went and I ran in that race. Well, I got first place in my age group.
Yeah.
It's amazing what motivates us.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that little $2 medal they give you or
Yeah.
trophy. I mean, I love those things.
If
I've got
that.
hundreds. You know, they're everywhere. But so anyway, I was hooked. I mean, from the time I was in my early 30s, I'm 57 now. There were years that I probably ran in 30, 40, 50 races. I mean, lots of 5Ks, lots of 10Ks. I hate 10Ks. That's my least.
I agree with you there.
That's my
They're bad.
least favorite. Either give me a 5K or a half marathon.
Yeah.
It's not that long, but you still have to go fast.
Yeah.
And
it's
it just wears you out.
It is. I think that's the worst distance ever. I did some 8Ks.
My favorite 10K is the 10K in the middle of a half marathon.
Oh yeah, true. So, but I never. There again, I do 5Ks, 8Ks, 10Ks, night runs. Never dreamed doing a half marathon. You know. So anyway, when I was at Joy Ranch, gentleman that worked there with me, he started running, and so we started challenging each other. And we went and ran the Virginia Beach Rock and Roll half marathon.
Okay.
That was my first half marathon, and it was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was a life changer for me. I mean, 13 miles. That was just amazing to me.
Yeah.
You know, to run that far, and I actually did pretty well. I have no idea how well, but I ran my first full marathon in 2001. Was the Kiowa Island Marathon. It was so cold. It was January. I did all of my training for that one on a treadmill.
Ooh.
shoot.
I hate treadmills.
Me too.
Since that time, I absolutely hate treadmills.
me
I
too.
don't. I'd rather run in the rain than to run on a treadmill. So, but I did all of my training on a treadmill, and the most I ever ran in that training was 13 miles. I would get up to 13 miles, and I just couldn't stand it. I would quit. So I went and ran the Kiowa Island Marathon, and actually my son Mike that I adopted, he went with me, and I don't think he ran in that one, but he ran in several after that. But I ran, well, no, maybe he ran the half and I ran the full. But I will never, ever forget how bad that hurt. I mean, you've run one,
I have,
how bad
yeah.
it hurts.
That first time, man, shoo.
I mean, I felt like I was freezing, number one. It was cold, you know. It was windy. It was cold. By mile 18, 19, I literally felt like it was bone hitting the pavement. I mean, it was just so painful. And after that, coming home the next day, I would have to literally take my legs and lift them out of the car because I could not lift them, you know. Once I got walking, I could shuffle.
Yeah.
But I stayed sore probably 10 days.
Yeah.
But never. I've run, I think last Saturday's Myrtle Beach Marathon was probably my 17th or 18th marathon. Even with years between them, no marathon since has hurt like that. I don't know. Something happens in your body that I guess it just doesn't forget. I don't know.
Mentally and
It's
physically.
like once you get to a certain mile, and I don't think if you haven't reached that before, it's totally different.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally different. For me, it was about mile 20.
Yeah.
And
Every time he tells the story, the number changes.
it does. It ranges from about 18 to 22. But I mean, it is. You reach it, and some people call it the wall.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a swamp
Yeah.
because it's not really. It starts here
That's a
and it
good way to
goes.
put it,
It
yeah.
goes a few miles.
Yeah.
But once you get to that little sloggy part, you can really push forward.
Oh, yeah.
But after you finish a marathon, it's a whole different feeling. It really is. You feel proud, but you're just really tired.
Absolutely. So
Really
now
accomplished.
I'm going to challenge you. You got to do the toughest road race in America.
Oh,
Blue Ridge Marathon.
Yeah.
Well, I
you
mean,
did that one?
I've done that one. That's the only one I ever dropped out on.
yeah.
Okay.
You know, have you heard of the DNF bus?
Mm.
No, I haven't.
That's the did not finish. Nobody wants to ride the DNF bus.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
the first year, I ran the half a couple of times there and decided I was going to do the full.
Mm-hmm.
How bad can it be? It's bad. It's tough.
Didn't you and Sam run the half together last year?
We did. Was it? Yes, it was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided to run the full. I went. I really wasn't. I'm bad not to train like I should, but I ran.
Yeah.
I ran and really was cramping so bad at mile 17. I could not move.
Yeah.
I mean, I could take a step, and I would just my body would lock. I could look at my calf, and it was just it was just twisted. And so anyway, I made it over. There was a brick wall. We were headed up a mountain. We were headed up the third mountain, and there was a brick wall. And I thought, if I can just get over there and sit on that wall for a minute, it'll be all right. I couldn't sit down. It was so bad.
Yeah.
It just got worse and worse. And I dropped out at mile 17, and I have hated that. I mean, I wish, like everything, that I had sat there for 30 minutes. Maybe it would have gotten better. That's the only race I've ever dropped out of in 30 years, 20 years, whatever, how many years I've been running races. But I went back the next year and did it. Yeah.
But yeah, just the whole marathon scene. Running 5Ks and half marathons, you see, and even marathons, you see a lot of people that run one a year.
Oh yeah.
And they're there, and it's really inspiring too. People you wouldn't normally think could even run, like an 85-year-old man.
Yeah.
I think like an 80-year-old beat me and Sam our first year we ran the Myrtle Beach Marathon. We didn't even have a bad time.
Yeah.
But that first year me and Sam ran, that was a very good experience for me. And then we ran together. I mean, we've run cross country for years.
Yeah. Well, I've learned in running that it's conditioning and training. I've had people way bigger than me beat me. I've had people way older than me beat me. It's a matter of training and being prepared. Yeah. It's really, you can train your body if you will.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
It just takes dedication.
And that's true. But at the end of the last cross country season, I was at home one day, and Sam, he's in the room with us now. So Sam called me up, and he said, "Well, Luke, do you want to do a 50K? It's 31 miles." I said, "Well, Sam, sure, I would love to." And when you're planning out these things,
oh, it sounds great.
Oh my, it's exciting. You're not thinking about actually doing it. You're thinking about, I'm going to run 31 miles. So I said sure. And after a cross country season, it's hard running for about 3 or 4 months in a row, and you just kind of want to just rest for a little while. So I took a break, and it's about November 3rd this season, and didn't it, Sam? And I took a little break, and 2 weeks turned into a month. Mm-hmm. And then I realized it's coming into December, and it's getting colder outside and everything. And December, it's about Christmas time. You kind of just want to rest and stay inside. And I realized a month, I'm going to have to be running 31 miles. And I hadn't ran longer than 13 miles in probably 5 or 6 months. And so I said, I'm going to train. And I started running about a mile or two a day, which is not much at all when you're running cross country and all this stuff. So I started running a mile or two a day. And Sam, me and you talked about training every day. So we're going to start training. And the next day I said, today we're going to start training. And the next day I said, tomorrow we're going to start training.
And then eventually...
And it kind of never happened.
So it led to the point where we were doing these breakouts in the morning before school that they said they had decided not to train because they wanted it to be a challenge.
So we ended up not training at all for the 31-mile race. It's our first ultra marathon, and it was probably one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And the bonding you have when you run too is magnificent. I mean, the best friends I've ever had have come from running. And I don't know if I didn't do running, if I never and I started cross country one day, I just decided to go.
Yeah.
And if I had to make that decision, I don't know where I would be right now, really. But me and Sam, we did that race. We started out, and everything felt good. The first, Sam, you can come over here for a second. Everything started out, really well. We were running. It felt good.
Yeah, I think it was about the first 11 miles or so. We felt pretty good. And after that, the reality set in.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget it. And y'all looked pretty good when you came around. How many trips did you do?
It was 4 laps. They're about 7.
When y'all came around the third lap, I will never forget it. I wish I had it on video. Your dad was worried about you.
I was.
He looks at me and he says, "He's not responsive."
That was about mile 25, and we had been doing loops for about 4 hours at that point. And when I came through that third loop, I was probably at my worst point in the race.
Yeah.
My absolute worst point in the race.
But I honestly knew when y'all got to that point and you started on your last lap that you were going to make it. I'll be honest. I begged him, y'all need to back out. I said, you're not trained. You don't have a clue what 31 miles is going to feel like. You need to back out. Well, of course, he refused to back out. You refused.
My mom called me the day before at school. She says, "I kind of want you to do the 20K," and I said, "Well," and I was shocked, and I said, "Well, I don't know what would happen if I backed at this point. It probably crushed me. It probably would have, because I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But if I had backed out, that would have just been terrible. But after I left that third loop, I got some pickle juice, which the listeners might think it's nasty, but ever since running, I love it. It tastes good.
Juice. That's one of my favorite. Pickled potato chip. Anything with pickles and peanut butter.
I took some. There's some like a sodium powder, and I felt good after that point. And Sam, I think you hit your wall about mile 29, 30.
Yeah, no, I hit my wall. Yeah, it was about 29. I remember, because I was trying to keep up this enthusiastic persona, because I didn't want both of us to be dying.
Well, he kept sending us videos
every mile. Yeah,
we sent a video every few miles, and I put on a persona for it, and then after I would just kind of slump back into it. But it really wasn't too bad until about mile 29, and that's when we started leaning on each other.
And there's literally the saying, lean on me.
Yeah.
Well, when you get to that point, you literally lean on each other, and that's what we did. We hobbled down. You got to the point where my IT band was so tight. Every time I picked up, my leg it shot to the side.
Oh, wow.
It was like, I thought I was going to snap. Yeah. But yeah, you just get to a point where, it was the longest 6 hours of my life. It was also the fastest. It's a weird time loop. It goes by so quick. Never forget.
It's impacted your life.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But I'm proud of you guys for doing it. It makes me mad that I've run for 30 years and he's run 31 before I did. But now here's the thing. 5 years ago, he did his first half at Myrtle Beach.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
I felt so sorry for him. He was, how old were you? 10?
10 years old.
And he was a chunky guy. He was not thin by any means.
Oh, you don't have to be nice. I was short and fat.
He was determined he was going to do that 13. I felt so bad for him. That Myrtle Beach, you always think of it being warm and nice. It was cold that day, and the wind was blowing so hard it would blow him backwards. When it's
cold at the beach, it's cold. 50 at the beach feels like
it would blow him backwards, and his feet were hurting so bad. I would beg him, let me just piggyback you. No, Dad, that would be cheating. And I would let's just quit. There's no shame in, you've done more than most kids 10 years old. By the time we hit 10, no, Dad, I'm not going to quit. He was a trooper.
The birth of a champ.
It's I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
And Sam is certainly not a quitter, but there comes a time like the 17 mile, I just couldn't do it, but it's tough. We went one of the toughest you get so many experiences in running. We went to run the Savannah. That was an ordeal. We Savannah Rock and Roll.
Was that the one where it rained out? Everybody?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. It was.
We went intending to switch him. We had both registered for the half. We were registered for the half, but we decided we were going to switch to the full because he was determined he was going to do it. Well, we got down there and through an ordeal of things, we found out Rock and Roll will not let anybody under 18 run the full marathon.
Yeah.
So we were back in the half. Well, turned out they had this freak storm that they canceled the full anyway and only ran the half. It was so cold and rainy and wind just blowing in sheets by. I wore a trash bag the whole 13 miles. He took his off.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the race, I remember at the end of the race, during the whole race, I'd kind of gotten used to the cold, and I'd made a few friends, like I tend to do while running. but there's still that friction, that momentum of you running, and you kind of forget about everything. But at the end of the race, my mom wasn't there, Dad hadn't finished yet. I had to sit cold and wet in a corner of a closed bank outside. The wind hit me. It was terrible.
But when it was over, we had fun
stories.
To tell. We got stranded on the island. The Kiowa was underwater. Tybee was. The roads were underwater, so we couldn't get out. And I said, we got stories to tell. We've been stranded on an island.
And there's something about a rain running. And sometimes we enjoy rain running.
If it's hot.
But if it's windy.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I don't enjoy that. But running gives you, I think some of the best people I've ever met are runners. Never forget, I ran the Goody, Kentucky Hatfield McCoy marathon. That was fun. We literally had a shotgun start, and people would be sitting on their porches as we ran through the neighborhoods. And the neighborhoods was out in the country, but they'd be firing shotguns into the air. You know, we ran across a swinging bridge. I ran with this lady who was a retired school teacher for several miles. There was a hill there called Blackberry Hill that I think, if I'm not mistaken, was 3.5 miles up. I mean, it was a 3.5 mile incline. I looked down at one point. She's 72 years old, and both toes of her shoes, white shoes, were blood red. The blood was rolling. I said, do you need to stop? She said, why? I said, well, your feet. She said, oh, honey, they do that in every marathon. It'll be fine. So, yeah, I just love, runners are most of the time happy people. They've got a good attitude. Yeah. They've got a good outlook on life. Because I think chemically, it's one of the best tools we have to fight depression and sickness, and most people don't use it. We live in a country that is unhealthy and overweight, and if something major happened, they'd be in trouble. I mean, it's hard. So, and I'm overweight myself. So, and I still run. I'm proof that a fat man can run. I tell people that all the time. But my goal is to lose the weight and get back down so I can keep running with this guy until I'm 100.
But yeah, I mean, you just see all these amazing people, especially at the 31 miles. The people there, when we started out, Sam, I mean, and I think that we're pretty athletic guys.
Oh, yeah.
But the people there, I mean, the guys that were 60 years old made us look like we were totally out of shape. There's this little lady there, and I didn't think nothing of her till y'all came and told me who she was. Her name was Desi Lyndon, and she was the first American woman to win the Boston Marathon. She was two-time Olympic marathon runner. Yeah. So my goal was, I mean, after I figured that out, I said, you know what, Sam, I think me and you should run with her and talk to her a little bit. When we got out of the gate, she was gone, and I never saw her again. That was it. So
she was done like 3 hours before you.
Yeah. But she was.
I don't feel bad about it. Really.
No, but I mean, there was this guy that passed us. I mean, and me and Sam, we started out a little bit too fast. We started hitting like 7:30s, 8-minute miles at the beginning, because you do that during a race. I remember that one Pilot Mountain race. Sam started out 6:15.
Yeah, that was stupid.
But we started out a little bit too fast, and by the end of it, we were going like 11, 12-minute miles. So we were still running, but we were still running.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah. But this old guy came, and he was just trotting on by. And you can tell he kept his pace the whole race. He just trot. And he beat us by 45 minutes an hour.
Steady wins the race.
Steady wins the race, especially those longer races. Steady.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know what we'll do next, Sam. I mean, I think 31 was the last distance that we can get by on grid. I think a 50-miler might end us if we didn't train.
I want to do a 24-hour race. Have you seen those?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just do as much as you can do in 24 hours. I'd like to do that sometime.
But I think the hard thing about those is that they're loop races a lot of times, and that would just kill me. But they have a Gus Grinder event down in Pilot Mountain. And they have a 3, 6, and 12 hour. And remember that?
Yeah, is it around the Pinnacle or how?
I'm not really sure, but they did it back in 2020, and I was obsessed with it. And that's what I was going to do instead of the Myrtle Beach Marathon, and I just really wanted to do it. And I think I want to do the 12 hour.
Yeah.
And after running that, I don't know what happened in 12 hours. But I just got kind of this wild hair. Are you guys
familiar with Corey Reese?
I don't think so.
You should read his book. He's got a book called Nowhere Near First.
Yeah, okay.
Corey Reese. He'll tell you himself he's not real athletic, but he runs 50-mile races, 100-mile races. He's not doing it for time. He's doing it for distance.
Yeah.
But they'll get out. I follow him on social media. They'll get out in the neighborhood and run 30-mile training runs, and they make up these crazy things. They stop at every convenience store and get a big gulp or a candy bar.
I think you've told me about
this. But they have a lot of fun with it. I like to have fun with. That's what I like about the rock and roll races. They have a band every mile.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll that motivates you somewhat when you've got something that sort of upbeat.
Yeah.
I told Samuel a few times in the Myrtle Beach Marathon last week, people would have music blaring, and I thought, well, I wish they could just follow us around with that. You know?
Have I told Oh, sorry. Have I told you the backyard story?
Oh, the sticks?
Yeah, so during COVID, I stopped running during COVID, really. After that season, we made it to state, that me and Ethan, that cross-country season in 2019. After that, I kind of stopped running because when COVID hit, I just got out of it. Well, I saw this guy, he was a Frenchman, and he was stuck in his apartment building because they all had COVID in the apartment. Well, he had this back porch that was 21 feet long. And he calculated how many laps he would have to do to get to a marathon. And he ran a marathon going back and forth on his back porch. Well, that just fascinated me. So I went and got 2 sticks in the backyard and planted them down. And I took my shoes off. I don't know why I took my shoes off, but I did. And I ran probably 7 miles around this 21-foot loop. But my feet started getting like blistering and bleeding. Wow. And Mom said, "Do you really want to go to the doctor during this?" I said no, so I backed out of it. But I killed the grass going around. But just people that can do that type of stuff. He went 21 miles going back and forth on his back porch was amazing. It's just a mental thing. Yeah. It's totally mental.
Well, and you mentioned too, you see people doing marathons that you never dreamed. Oprah did a marathon.
Oh, really? I
didn't
realize that.
She did a marathon. What's the guy's name that used to do the weather on NBC every morning? African American guy. Oh shoot, he was obese. He weighed like 400 pounds.
Wasn't Al Roker? Was it?
Al Roker.
Al Roker.
Al Roker.
Al Roker.
He started training, lost a bunch of weight, and I read his book, and it's amazing to read his story of running a marathon. And I love what Al Roker says. He says his win in a marathon is not pooping his pants. Okay. But he's done more than one marathon now. So
I have a book I think you would like. It's called Ultra Marathon Man by Dean Karnazes.
Dean Karnazes, I've read it. Yeah.
You've read it? Yeah. That man is pretty fascinating. He ran in high school, but he didn't start really running until he was 30 years old.
Wow.
And it was the night of his 30th birthday, and he was kind of depressed. He had a really good job, but just his life wasn't going that well. And he was at a bar with his friends, and they wanted him to do like 30 shots altogether. And he said, "I don't think so." He said, "I just don't feel like it." And he went outside, and he said, something hit him. And he said, "I'm going to run 30 miles tonight for my 30th birthday." Wow. And he did it. And his story is pretty amazing. I think he's ran the longest of anybody. He ran for 3 days straight.
Wow.
Oh, is that the person who did the 300 miles?
300 miles.
Yeah. Across California, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing what people can do. I mean, our bodies will do a whole lot more than what we demand of them. So.
Yeah. So, you and Sam have ran every day for how long? How long's the streak now?
700 some days.
We're in 700 and some days without missing a mile.
Close to 800.
Yeah.
So that's a mile, at least a mile more.
The first year we did it, we did 1,200 miles that year. The second year we came in at about 1,040, something like that. And so this year my goal, he always wants to up the goal, and then you got to work really hard at the end of the year to make it up. But we didn't make a goal this year other than the mile a day. I would love to hit another 1,200 miles. We've got to pick up the pace if we're going to do that. But I mean, we've made memories. We've made. It's just we went to Tybee Island, Georgia, and got there at 10 minutes till midnight. We had to go do our mile, because we couldn't miss that day without a mile. We have done it in parking lots when we've been traveling. We've done rain, we've done snow, we've done ice, we've run in boots, we've run. Yeah. I mean, we've run in every situation under the sun. And it's just, I'll never regret that. I mean, and I read stories of these people who've been doing it 20 years, not missed a day in 20 years. Yeah,
people in the hospital after surgery. Oh, where are you going, patient? Oh, I got to go run my mile around the hospital.
I have read a story about a guy who did his mile in the hospital doing laps around. Yes, doing that laps around inside the hospital.
It's a weird community, but it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And but like Sam, I think I need to mention this. Sam's kind of a wild man.
Yeah.
And he's gotten into rodeoing here recently. So I think, if he's going to be on the podcast, and he's been begging the past few days. I said, Sam, I don't know. I said, when we find time, but here he is. And Sam, since you're already on, I might give you a chance to talk about your rodeoing a little bit.
Well,
Let me start.
Okay, yeah, let you start.
He's wanted to ride a bull from the time he was old enough to walk. I don't know whatever gave him that. I guess he saw it on TV or something, but He's going to ride a bull. And he's never riding a bull. I'm not letting him ride a bull. I mean, he's riding motorcycles. He's done all kinds of dangerous stuff. He's had snakes for pets, but he's not riding a bull. So anyway, for his 15th birthday, he comes to me the week of his birthday, and he says, "Dad, the only thing I want for my birthday is to ride a bull." I said, "Okay, Samuel, I'll see if we can find some." There's nobody in their right mind that's going to let a 15-year-old ride a bull who's never rode a bull. Yeah. So I put it on Facebook. Is there anybody? My 15-year-old says his only desire is to ride a bull. Is there anybody who will let my son, who knows what they're doing, let my son ride a bull for his 15th birthday? Tommy Billings Way Rodeo.
Great guy. Over
in Whitfield. He is an amazing guy. He messages me back and says, "Bring him over here on Wednesday afternoon. I'll put him on a bull." He said, I thought, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. So we went, and it was a steer, but it's still, I mean, it was...
Did you go the 8 seconds, Sam?
Absolutely. Well, okay.
I don't remember on the
Not the first time. The first one, I got a little ahead of myself. I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. And a big thing with rodeoing, or bull run, steer run, whatever, your arm. You have to use your free arm to balance, one arm to balance yourself and one arm to hold on to it. I was just kind of flinging it around, whatever, trying to look cool. That didn't help. But then, trial and error. I rode it 2-3 times, not too great. I was getting down on myself. And then I found my technique, which I still use. I just get mad. I'm in the chute, and I start growling. It's weird saying it.
Oh, Sam, I don't think it's weird for you, man. I've seen it many times.
Yeah, I mean, I just huffing, puffing, and you grit your teeth, and you go out, and if you say you're going to do something, or if I say I'm going to do something, like in the ultra marathon, I fully intend to do it.
That's right.
And I did it that time, and I was so happy after.
He was a happy young man when he got bucked off of that thing.
Yeah, and then I went on to ride in my first rodeo about a week after that. I didn't win, but I didn't get bucked off. I stayed on all I needed to, and then I rode one more after that. I won that one, and then I went to the finals. And instead of steer, they had littler bulls.
Yeah.
Junior bulls.
Yeah, junior bulls. And that was completely new to me. The steer would kind of just run and do whatever. But the junior bulls that I was getting on, which I'd never had anything like, they would actually buck, spin, jump, and
we did get to see him get his bell rung.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I did that the finals was 3 nights. I rode all 3 nights. I won all 3 nights. I got the belt buckle on now. But
is that the hat too?
No, this isn't the hat. I got this one for Christmas. I wish they gave out hats. That'd be nice.
Sam, I mean, and me and Sam pick fun at each other all the time. But when he told me he was riding steers, I had to. It was a whole big old thing. He said, I'm riding bulls. I said, Sam, you're riding steer now. And it was kind of like a point back and forth. But and I would send him videos like a little kid riding like a sheep. Yeah. And I said, here's Sam going. Yeah, but that one time, you hurt your knee, didn't you?
Oh yeah, but that was
wrestling.
That was shoot dogging. You get in the chute with a steer, and they open the gate, and you got to get it out and flip it on its back.
You got to get it, hold it by his horns, or his, not horns, but...
Yeah, his horns and his snout, whatever. But
But no, Samuel, the steer was way too big for him to wrestle. And he knew that going into it. Yeah. But Samuel, being who he is, he would not let go. That steer drug him all over that ring.
Oh yeah, no, there was a full-grown man. He had to be 6 foot something, 200 some pounds, and he got the littler one. He couldn't even get his down. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I got in there.
You wouldn't let go.
No, I wouldn't let go. That thing stomped on me and my knee.
Pretty funny.
Sam is the most determined person I've ever met.
Absolutely.
We've been running, and he's literally vomiting, and he
won't
say anything.
And that's running. And that's kind of A point with Sam, he vomits a lot.
Yeah, he does.
He's done that since he was born.
Yeah. We were at the Pilot Mountain half marathon. I mean, we got to the top of the mountain, and they got all this red Gatorade laid out. And I got one, but Sam got a few. And about 5 minutes later, he turned his head and just 5 times, boom, 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 boom. I was like, Sam, are you okay? He said, yeah, I'm fine. And he was perfectly fine after that. If I had thrown up 5 times, I would probably have slowed down a little bit.
When he was a 3-month-old baby, he would lay on our king-size bed and puke, and it would go over the other side of the bed.
And Sam, I hope you know that some people we go to school with will probably be listening to this.
That's okay. Listen, I'm not ashamed. If I'm getting it done, it doesn't matter what I have to do.
He's a puker, that's for sure.
No, it's always been a problem for me, but it honestly makes me feel better most of the time.
Yeah, and during that 31-mile race, you threw it beforehand, and I thought, I said, here we go. And he started a puke count, but at that point, you were fine the whole race, which I was shocked about.
Do you remember what the number got up to? You sent us a video every time you
did
it.
Oh, did he really?
No, really, I puked before the race, and never again. No, I didn't puke.
But see, if I do it during a race, I feel kind of queasy for the rest of the time. So, but yeah. Now, Ronnie, we're getting on towards the end of the interview now, and for every interview, I kind of want to ask our interviewee this question. I'm a big fan of American history, a huge fan of American history. What historical American figure has impacted you the most?
Oh, I think my historical, and you're probably talking about American history, but mine go all the way back to the Bible. Yeah. I mean, my favorite character in the Bible is Joseph. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love the story of Joseph. Joseph was mistreated, sold into slavery by his brothers. He was, he was put in prison for something he didn't do. Mm-hmm. Yet God elevated him to a place of leadership, and his attitude was always not to go after those people who had done him wrong, but to forgive them and move on. Because and that's been a life lesson for me, is not to hold grudges. So Joseph is my favorite historical person. Other than that, I mean, a lot of my heroes are people like John Wesley, who started the Methodist Church. He had a whole lot to do with when America was founded. General Oglethorpe, when they came onto the island. A lot of people don't know this, but John Wesley was the founder of the Methodist Church. Yeah. He came here from England, arrived in Georgia, was there as a missionary for a period of time. A lot of people don't know that he was run out of Georgia back to England. And the reason was that he fell in love with a girl. Her name was Sophie Hopke. He fell in love with her and wanted to marry her, but she ended up marrying somebody else, so he refused to give her communion. Oh. So she actually, her dad happened to be the sheriff. Yeah. So Wesley had to leave town or go to jail. So it was, I love, there's a lot of old preachers that I love, that go way, way, way back,
Who's the preacher who wrote Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God?
Jonathan Edwards.
John. Have you looked at much of his work?
I've read that. I'm not a big fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we read it in school, and it was kind of...
Yeah, it's interesting. He has some interesting theological ideas. Yeah, I read some of his work.
And I tell everybody, I didn't grow up in church at all. My parents didn't go to church when I was little. We didn't grow up in church. We'd go to Bible school, vacation Bible school and things. But when I got in church in my early 20s, I spent my first 15 years in a Baptist church, and then went to a non-denominational church, and then ended up pastoring in a Methodist church for 18 years. But my favorite Bible teacher is a man by the name of Dr. Steve Brown, who's Presbyterian. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love, we're not going to talk about Calvinism, but 5 points of Calvinism.
It's interesting. The tulip.
Yeah, the tulip. And I've said I'm probably 3, maybe 4 on the tulip, but I just can't quite do 5. I love, though, Steve Brown used to tell the joke that, Presbyterians, we believe we're predestined for everything. Yeah. So you heard about the Presbyterian who fell down the steps. And he said, I sure am glad that's over.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me ask you, Ethan, have you read all these books?
These are actually my dad's.
Oh, okay, all right.
But yeah, there's probably, 200 books on this shelf?
Yeah. Some good Pat Laconi. I see some good authors over there, some folks that I have run and I read. And
a lot of it's like reference manuals of sociology textbook. My dad was professor of I think sociology and psychology.
Yeah, I see one with Reiki over there. I've read a little bit about that.
There's the DSMs.
Yeah. I love to learn new things.
Yeah.
I love.
My dad's the same way.
Yeah, I'll just read anything I can get my hands on. My dad was really an encourager in that. He, from the time I can remember, World Book encyclopedias don't exist anymore. They don't make them anymore.
Yeah.
But it was A to Z, the World Book encyclopedia. My dad, every night before bed, would take 15 or 20 minutes and read from the encyclopedia. He never told us, but I think what he was doing was reading through the encyclopedia. And he knew, I mean, he could talk about things, when somebody would come up with these crazy subjects. That one's the encyclopedia of what? Appalachia.
I was looking at that the other day.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one thing I try to do, and I've been trying to do it, and I get out of it sometimes, but I try to make it a point, is to read before bed.
Yeah.
Because it helps me relax. And
Right.
And one of my favorite authors, and I said I'll probably mention this on almost every podcast, is David McCullough. Have you read any of him?
No, I haven't read it.
He's an American nonfiction writer, and he writes stories like John Adams,
Yeah.
1776. And he wrote Americans in Paris. It's all about Americans going to Paris in the 1800s and the path between the seas at the Panama Canal.
Right.
He just loves America.
Right.
And he's a really good historian. But that's who I read most of the time. And I read a lot. I read fantasy novels. I'm going through Steinbeck right now. But yeah, just reading. It's something about it.
What is the book, the series that was so popular here about 10 years ago? That I read it and absolutely loved it. Might have been more than 10 years ago. They made a movie series out of it.
Written by...
golly, what was it?
It wasn't the one.
Katniss was.
The Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that series, and I truly believe, with all of my heart. Now, I don't know if you thought about this or not, but I truly believe in the Hunger Games. Collins, what was her name?
Suzanne
Collins wrote that book, and I've listened to a couple of interviews that she's done about that series. I honestly believe that in that she was writing about the end times the way she really sees the end times being. We read in the Bible about the end times. You remember the Tracker Jackers?
Yeah.
Did y'all read that series?
Yeah, those are terrifying.
They're in the Bible. Similar, it's funny. There's a lot of biblical stuff about that series that a lot of people don't catch, but it's there, and I absolutely loved that series.
That series reminds me a little bit of like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451. I'm reading 451 right now. I read 1984 a few weeks ago.
I haven't intend to read it, but I'm not. I bought a book from At the Beach, Marcus Aurelius.
You've got Fahrenheit and
451's a quick read. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
1984 is a bit hard to get through at times. Yeah. It's a bit pedantic too.
Yeah.
But it's a good read. But yeah, I think it and The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games aren't as serious as 1984 or even Fahrenheit 451, but I think they both describe a word, like, potentially in the future that is very scary.
Have you read any Steinbeck?
No, not really.
I've been getting to him. I've been reading The Grapes of Wrath the past week or two. And,
you enjoying that?
Yeah, it's a good read.
Okay.
People were poor in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl, and you really get a good glimpse of American history during that time period.
Yeah.
But and I'm also right now, I've talked about this in last week's podcast, I'm slowly, every day, going through the Federalist Papers, reading a note a day. Wow. And that's a heavy read. Yeah. Because
there's a series you guys would probably like too. There's Angels and Demons. There's like 5. I think it's Grisham's series, and the last one is just phenomenal. I mean, it's a huge.
And they're movies too.
One, I think, is the name of that book. Yeah, they've made movies out of most of them, but they are really. And a lot about what he's writing is the theory of the Illuminati and
Yeah.
all that, you know.
Well, I don't know if we should talk about that on the
On the
podcast.
podcast. Well,
I'm joking.
we
I'm
might,
joking.
We might get discovered.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but I, you know, in reading, especially when, and I did it when it was print books, but especially since the digital books is, you know, I don't get frustrated in traffic jams. I read. If I'm stuck in traffic, I'm reading something.
Yeah.
If I'm waiting in the grocery store, I'm reading from my phone.
Have you tried audiobooks?
I do. I
Okay,
do.
yeah.
In the last several years, I have started using audiobooks when I run. Some
Yeah.
if
Okay,
I'm running
yeah.
by myself, and especially if I'm training for a marathon, I'll listen to audiobooks.
I just can't really.
I don't
Yeah.
like
My
them as
mind
good.
starts to wander,
Yeah,
and
don't
I
like them as
realize
good.
it's been 30 seconds, and I
Yeah.
don't know what's going on.
Well, I realize 10 minutes. Sometimes I hadn't heard a thing for 10 minutes. You
Yeah.
know, but I'll just go back and recap on that. But I do like that. I mean, I have really enjoyed some of those. You know, some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on the genre
And the reader, probably.
yeah. Who's reading the book? And
Have you researched much into your family ancestry?
not much,
Nice.
really. My
Something-
wife, by the way, you asked about family
yeah.
ancestry. My wife is from El Salvador.
Mhm.
Misty was adopted and brought here when she was 2.5, and we've often wondered about her
Mhm.
ancestry, but she's not. Her adopted parents here are her parents.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, I think when we had children, it started making her wonder. You know, what did happen to her mother and father? You know,
Yeah.
and in that time in El Salvador, they were in a time of civil unrest. So
Yeah.
you know, you wonder, was she taken from her parents? You know, were her parents killed? Really don't know, but she was in an orphanage there when they adopted her and
Do you
brought
know
her here.
what
so.
part of El Salvador she was from?
She does. She went for the first time as an adult. She went back on a mission trip about probably 10 years ago.
Something like that. It was when I was little.
And this, one of the pastors there told her that she might well have Indian,
Oh, okay, so like native.
native Indian
Interesting.
in her too, based on her nose. I mean, and when he said that, and when we look at pictures, you can see that. You can see where that comes from. But so, and he said there was a certain part of the country there that most of the ones that were native Indian and El Salvadoran that would have come from, and he offered to help, you know, find her family, but she's uncomfortable about it just because of
understandably.
you know, situations right now. But I think someday she'll try to figure it out.
And family history is powerful. I think we are our own people,
Yeah,
and I think that we can make our own decisions. But their story directly impacted your
Sure.
story too. And looking back, I mean, especially as a lover of history, looking back at ancestry is really interesting. And for the past few years, and I've been kind of blessed with a lot of my family have been into ancestry, so I've gotten to learn a lot about, like, not 10 miles from here. I have relatives that are buried that fought in the Revolutionary War.
oh, wow.
So I mean, it's just, and that goes to say, like, my family's been here in this county for
Right.
hundreds of years. So really, just
Right.
it's really interesting
Yeah.
figuring that family history
Yeah,
out.
I am interested in that stuff. I just have not slowed down long enough to. One of these days, I'm going to rest, but it's hard.
It's hard to find that information
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it is. It's difficult.
And I've been my great grandpa. He was in World War II, and we know some of this. Like he's in Italy and stuff, and we know that. But I wanted to get some more service records,
Yeah.
and I tried to go to the Library of Congress website, and it was like all this stuff you have to fill out, like next of kin and all this.
Right.
And it's like a whole big process to get these records, and it's hard.
Have you talked to them at the Historical Society?
I've went up there, but I need to go back because they
Yeah.
know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Shelby that works there is a relative of mine, and
Yeah.
she could help you.
Well, we were interested in having some of those people on the podcast,
Oh,
so just to
wow.
talk
Shelby would
about
be a great one for you.
local history.
This
Yeah.
my boss suggested this to me. Some people from like the Andy Griffith Museum down
Oh,
in
yeah.
Mount A.
Yeah.
They'd have some interesting
Oh, yeah.
stories and a lot to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I mean, I grew up watching that show.
Yeah.
I think all of us probably
Didn't
grew
we all?
up watching Randy
I
Griffith.
still
Yeah.
love watching it.
During COVID, I went through the whole series again. It was on
Yeah.
Netflix, and I
Oh, it
enjoyed.
was?
Yeah, I mean-
that's,
When it came on WDBJ7, I always felt like I was watching a new episode every
Yeah.
day.
Oh, yeah.
Like I haven't seen one
Well, you
before.
can watch them over and
Yeah,
over
over and over
They
again.
never get old.
But,
I love those shows.
And I like it when they kind of reference I mean, it's set in Mayberry, which is Mount Airy in real life, and it was filmed in Hollywood. But they kind of make references to things that are around here.
Right.
And when they talk about the mountains, you kind of like, Ernest T. Bass. He's not from Mount Pilot, but he's from the mountains,
Right.
which means he probably has to be from here.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really interesting.
Real interesting history. You know, Andy in the end, Andy Griffith said that it wasn't based on Mount Airy.
Really, but I mean,
Yeah. But I think that had to do. He was described as not, and he even said himself that he was a grumpy person. You might find this interesting. He and Aunt Bee didn't like each other.
oh yeah,
They didn't have a good relationship at all.
they said they made up at the end. Though,
Yeah,
but I mean,
He
they
said
said she was.
despised him
Yeah.
when they were on the show.
Which I mean, Aunt Bee's character she's a different woman.
Yeah.
But I mean, the show's so iconic. You think that they're a family in real life, and to see that they are not.
Right.
You know, they really have problems with each other. It's really weird to see.
Well, I often say I long for the days of Mayberry where you could sit out on the front porch and play a guitar and just waste away the days. I remember one of the episodes when Andy asked Barney, he says, "What are you going to do today, Barney?" And he says, "Well, I'm going to get me a Coke. I'm going to sit here on the porch a while and might go get me another Coke." Those days never were really real.
Yeah.
I mean, life has never been that simple. I mean, it's
people,
always been.
they said back in the good old days, the simple days, they never existed.
Oh no.
They had those people, and we might have different variations of problems.
Right.
They said history never repeats itself, but it often rhymes.
Right.
I've heard spirals.
Yeah.
They had the same problems, but it was different situations.
Yeah.
And they had the same family issues. They had the same.
Oh sure.
They had the same things. So I mean, it was simpler, like technologically, but the human issues were the same.
That's right. Well, and we just deal with different issues. I mean, we often say we would like to have those days, but we like our indoor toilets and
Absolutely.
we like running water in the house.
Electricity, the internet,
electricity,
Access
heat.
to the internet.
Yeah.
Heat, that's a big one.
Heat that we don't have to split the firewood, and, So I enjoy life. I mean, we've learned to make the best of all. I think if there's one thing that frustrates me, it's these phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them and I hate them.
Yeah.
Because I love the fact that it makes us connected. All my life growing up, we had relatives in Las Vegas and Oregon and Kansas and all around the country that we didn't get to be with.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 15 years, we've been together every day because so I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the connection of it. I hate the tether. We are tied to it.
Yeah.
It's almost like an extension of your body in some way.
Yeah.
Especially talking to kids our age, and hey, I'm no different. I look at my phone all the time,
Yep,
and I confess to that. But like even with Ethan, me and you, and I'm not dogging on Ethan here, but I remember like the other day we were eating dinner somewhere and just talking, and I was talking for a few minutes. I looked down, Ethan was just looking at us. I said, "Ethan,
you did the same
and
thing."
he said, I did the same thing too eventually, but
Yeah.
it's
we
just
all do it.
yeah. Well,
I said my biggest laugh is the people who go on social media and criticize people who use social media.
Yeah.
Well, Luke, I know you don't have any social medias, do you?
No, I've been moving away from it. I just realized, I was spending an exorbitant amount of time on it, and I still have YouTube and stuff. And I guess I'm back
Social
on the
media
social
now.
media scene now, but
In a different way.
in a different way, yeah. But I just try to step away from it.
But social media is going to be one of the biggest
assets for us,
for
absolutely.
your podcast.
So
my
it's very
business,
important.
my business. We were talking about real estate. Most of my business has come from social media.
Yeah.
People seeing the post.
And they say and eventually I might have to get a professional account.
Yeah.
Because they said a lot of
Right.
employment opportunities come from social media.
LinkedIn.
People are reaching out and they're putting jobs on these platforms and stuff. So, in some sense, I don't want to be involved in all the riff-raff, but in another sense, it's also very important too.
Right.
Especially as times are changing. That's like not getting a TV
Right.
in the 50s because you think, it's eventually,
It's evil.
yeah, it's evil, but it's going to be, it's here to stay.
Yeah, I remember when HBO became big, and the churches dubbed it Hell's Box Office. I'll never forget that. Yeah, it's just,
Hey, I don't think I've heard that before.
you know, you can make evil out of anything.
And they have some good programs on HBO. Band of Brothers, have you seen
Yeah,
it?
I haven't. I don't watch much TV. I mean,
Yeah.
for years we've sat around the fire pit rather than watch TV and read. You know, with kids in the house, I've learned to read when they were screaming and fighting and running through the house, and you know, so many things going on. I think that's one reason I enjoy driving a bus. Is as long as nobody's hurt,
Yeah.
I don't care if they're loud. That doesn't bother me. I've learned to tone it all out and do what I'm doing. But that comes into play in a lot of things in life. As I get older, that's a little harder to do. But
As we're winding down here, I have a question. It's a bit corny, but what do you think the meaning of all this is?
Ethan, I told you about asking this question. But
the meaning of all what?
Life.
Oh wow!
I mean, this is probably the most existential question
Wow.
you've
The
ever
human
asked. But,
condition.
you could probably write a thesis.
I'm sure you could.
I mean, I guess I would go back, Ethan, to the true meaning of it is, I truly believe in the creation story that God created us in the beginning. I truly believe that He created us to live forever. He never intended for us to die. But in order for us, and I tell people this all the time, people ask, why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow evil in the world? And here's my answer. God allows suffering and God allows evil because He loves us. Because God did not create robots. If He had created, I don't ever want to marry somebody who has to marry me.
Yeah.
I want to marry somebody who wants to marry me.
Yeah.
God, as our creator, had to create somebody who had the ability, if they wanted to walk away from Him, to walk away from Him. Now, I do wonder, I ponder greatly why it continues.
Mhm.
Because things just seem to get more and more and more evil. I mean, there's so much evil in the world.
Yeah.
I do wonder, but at the same time, and I haven't shared this, so let me share this a little bit. My sister, you asked if I had siblings. My sister was 3 years older than me. When she was 26, she was murdered by her second husband. She had two little boys. They were 4 years old and 7 years old, and my mom and dad and I raised them then. So I raised my first two when I was in my early 20s. So we lost her to a murder. My brother, who was 13 months older than I am, when he was 45, he was about a half mile from his house, ran off the road, and he wouldn't wear a seatbelt. Never wore a seatbelt, just wouldn't wear one. There was not a scratch on him, not a drop of blood. It slung him across the truck and broke his neck when he sideswiped that tree. So I lost my only sister when I was 23. She was 26. I lost my only brother when I was 44 and he was 45. Then my dad, Father's Day weekend, when Samuel was 5 or 6, he was my hero. Dad's my hero. I mean, you know, he was my banker. He was my fixer. There wasn't anything that ever went wrong in my life that Dad couldn't make better.
Yeah.
Dad started having heart trouble, and we always rode motorcycles. We'd ride motorcycles to the beach every year, and Dad rode a Goldwing, which is a huge bike, heavy bike. And so when he started having heart trouble, he and Mom would ride that thing, and they'd stop at a stoplight, and he would drop her. You know, you can't keep doing that. You need to sell that thing. You know, he wouldn't sell it. So anyway, I sold my motorcycle, hoping it would cause him to sell his. Well, it didn't. He kept it for a couple more years. Finally, one Saturday morning, he decided that he would sell it. He put the motorcycle in my yard. It was beautiful. It was an absolutely gorgeous bike. He put the motorcycle in my yard, and 30 minutes later, it was sold. 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The guy wanted it delivered to his house. So I said, all right, Dad, I'm going to take, no, I'm going to ride it one last time. Well, he did. Mm-hmm. And he had a heart episode while he was riding, and he wrecked. And that was Father's Day weekend. He and Samuel were really close. He died from complications with his heart in the hospital after that. And I'll never forget, and I'm a firm believer in everything in the Bible. the meaning and the purpose of all of this is that God did create creatures that he loved, that he wanted us to learn to love him back. After you've lost your only sister, your only brother, your dad, and I can tell you, folks, the day my dad died, the next day I walked out on my porch and the world looked different. Nothing looked the same. I mean, nothing's ever been the same. And that was in 2013, so that's been 11 years ago. Will be in June. I was running. That's the way. When my brother got killed, I went through I'm sure I was clinically depressed and didn't know it for about a year. I mean, I just wanted to die myself. I wasn't suicidal or anything like that. I just didn't want to live. I thought, we were close. I mean, my brother and I we were worlds apart, different. We didn't like the same people. We didn't like the same things, but we talked every day, and he would have fought to the death for me, and I would have for him. Matter of fact, we talked on the phone for over an hour the day he died. So anyway, I'm running down the road one day in Mount Airy, and I'm crying. I mean, this big grown man, I'm running down the road crying, and I'm asking God, why? Why do we have to lose the people that we love? And if you've ever heard God speak audibly, when you hear him speak. I heard God just as loud as loud could be. And he says, Ronnie, I loved your sister and your daddy and your brother before you ever loved them. And they were mine before they were ever yours. And you're going to be with them for eternity. I'm a firm believer that everything that we are learning in life and going through and experiencing is preparing us for how we're going to live for eternity. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a good question, tough question.
It does,
by the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll have to listen to every podcast now to hear how everybody answers that question. But
I know this can't top that, but I think to end out, I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for young people starting to make their way in the world?
To be like you guys, the three of you sitting in this room, and I want to say this, I admire you all for Samuel's not afraid to do anything. You guys live life and enjoy. You're doing a podcast. I wouldn't have done a podcast when I was your age for anything in the world. I would speak in public when I was your age. I mean, to be a preacher for 18 years, honest to goodness. When I was in high school, English, I would do a written report and take a grade lower rather than get up in front of my class and do a public speech. Mm-hmm. I just wouldn't do it. So I just admire you all for having the guts to live life. Don't sit back and let life pass you by. Live, enjoy life. Don't do stupid things. But take some chances, and the biggest risk in the world truly is, and it's a cliche at this point, is to not take any risk. It's you got to live. You got to enjoy life. You got to see the world, and do be active in life.
Yeah.
I mean, we people often ask me, when do we ever sleep in our house, and we don't sleep a whole lot. We sleep when we're dead. I mean, we love life. I mean, we laugh a lot, and we have a lot of fun, and we enjoy each other's company. I mean, it's just, and we got lots of good friends. I mean, that just salt of the earth, good people, and my advice to you all would be, don't ever let anybody's opinion of you keep you from doing what you feel in your heart you want to do or need to do, because it really doesn't matter what another person's opinion is. Everybody has one. Mm-hmm. Most of the time when people criticize you, it's because they envy you. That is the truth. I know we often tell kids, when people are mean to you, it's because they're missing something in their own life. It's true. When you're happy and satisfied in this life, you're not putting other people down. You're building them up, mm-hmm. and trying to help them go further. So I think you all my advice would to be like you guys. I would love to have been like you guys when I was your age and making strides and doing life. I think you ought to run for public office, Luke.
Well, that's something I've always been interested in government. I was going to try to do it next year. I'm up to 17 years old.
I'll be your biggest supporter.
Oh, thank you. And like you said, I can't do it because of the elections this year, but it might have all worked out for the best. It's something I might want to go to school for. I'm not really sure right now, but I've always been, like I said, a big fan of history, and I see these men doing all these and women doing all these important things. And
today's International Women's Day.
It is.
It is.
It is. We talked about that at school, but they
March
did
8th.
all these important things, and why can't we be a part of that?
Right.
Continue that on.
Yeah, I want to leave a legacy for my.
Yeah.
I want to be remembered for making a difference in life, and in the world for people.
Well,
I don't want to just take up space.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Well,
Thank
Ronnie.
you, Sam, for coming over and
Oh,
talking
you're
to us.
welcome. Thank you all
y'all.
for inviting us on. We're glad to be a part of
It's
it.
been a real honor for both of
it's
you.
been. I mean, when looking back at interviews, I think this is exactly how I pictured it.
Yeah.
We really wanted to have a human connection with our guests,
Yeah.
and that's our main goal for this podcast is reaching out to people and just having the chance to really sit. Because so often in life, you have these encounters, and we've talked to you a lot, but you have these encounters. You
Right.
talk for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Most of the time you don't get a chance to sit down and just talk to
That's
somebody.
true. That is
And
true.
I think that's really powerful. My name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Instagram, and as well as your favorite podcasting app. Our email is theugspodcast@gmail.com, and our website is theugspodcast.com.
If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.